Hey 7th graders, welcome to Chapter 4, Lesson 3. In this chapter, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding and subtracting like fractions. We need to know what the word like fraction means. So, our I can statements, the statements we need to be able to say that we can do by the end of this lesson are these two statements. I can add like fractions, and I can subtract like fractions. If you feel like you can't add like fractions, and you feel like you struggle with subtracting like fractions, I want to see you after school for tutoring so I can help you understand these parts. We need to be able to say that we can do these things, so that's our goal today. You guys can add like fractions, and you can subtract like fractions. Here's our standards, 7th grade number standards 1 and 3. Let's go ahead and start the lesson. For our vocab today, we only have one vocab word, like fractions. Like fractions are fractions that have the exact same denominator, so the number on the bottom is exactly the same. Now, to add or subtract like fractions, all you got to do is add or subtract the numerators, the numbers on top. So to add or subtract like fractions, you just add or subtract the top numbers. Keep the bottom number, or the denominator, the same. So, if I had 5 tenths plus 2 tenths, I add 5 and 2 and I get 7. Well, the denominator was 10, so it's 7 over 10. If I had 11 twelfths minus 4 twelfths, 11 minus 4, that's 7, and both of these were over 12, so my answer is 7 out of 12. And that's how we add and subtract like fractions. So let's look at some examples and let's try to see if we can do this on our own. I believe that you guys can do this. So in example 1, we're going to be adding two fractions together, and we're going to write the answer in simplest form. What simplest form means that if we can divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number, then we can simplify the fraction because we're dividing it by something that actually equals 1. So 5 ninths plus 2 ninths. Both of these are over 9, so they have common denominators. Since they have common denominators, that's why we can add them. If these fractions did not have common denominators, you cannot add them until the denominators are the same. So if I have 5 ninths plus 2 ninths, hopefully you guys can solve that on your own. 5 plus 2, that's 7. 9 plus, we keep the 9 alone, so 7 ninths. So this is 7 ninths. Now I look at the numerator, and I look at the denominator, and I say, can I divide anything out of both of those? In this case, we can't, so 7 ninths is our answer to number 1. That's the fraction in simplest form. In example 2, we're adding 7 twelfths and 5 twelfths. So we look at the numerators. Okay, we have 7 and 5. We look at the denominators, they're the same, since they're saying we can add 7 plus 5. That's 12. 12 stays 12. So 12 divided by 12 is going to be my answer. So in simplest form, my answer is just going to be the number 1, because 12 divided by 12 is 1. In example 3, we're adding two negative fractions. Notice that the denominators are still the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the rules of what we learned in the previous chapter. When adding two negatives, when we add two negatives, we have more negatives. So if I have negative 3 and I'm adding negative 1, a negative 3 plus a negative 1 is a negative 4. So this means that my answer is negative 4 fifths. Two negatives adding together, we just add them together, keep the sign the same. Negative 3 plus negative 1, that's negative 4. We had 3 negatives, we add one more negative, we have 4 negatives. In example 4, we're again adding two negatives. We have 4 negatives, and we're adding negative 1. So we're adding 1 negative. We already have 4 negatives. We don't need to worry about the denominator because the denominators are the same. So the only numbers we're actually looking at is the numerators. We have 4 negatives, we're adding 1 more negative. If I have 4 negatives and I add 1 more negative, we end up with 5 negatives, and this answer would be negative 5 sixths. And that's our answer. In example 5, we have a word problem that deals with working on a project. And it says, on Monday, Kiefer worked on a project for 3 tenths of an hour. On Tuesday, he worked on it for 7 tenths of an hour. On Wednesday, he worked on it for 9 tenths of an hour. How much time did he work on his project? So what we're going to do is we're going to add all the time that he worked on his project and figure out the total. Well, we know he worked 3 tenths of an hour on day 1. Then he worked 7/10 of an hour on day 2, and then he worked 9/10 of an hour on day 3. So what we're doing is we're adding these three fractions together. Well, 3 plus 7, that's 10. 10 plus 9, that's 19/10. And so this is called an improper fraction. So what we do is we say, if we have 19, how many times could we take 10 away? Well, we can take 10 away one time, because 1 times 10 is 10. Well, 19 minus 10, that leaves us with 9 left. So that means that he worked on his project for 1 9/10 of an hour. In example 6, we're now looking at subtraction of two fractions. So we're actually looking at the subtraction of a negative 5/8 minus 3/8. So we have a negative 5/8, and we're going to take away 3/8. So what we want to do is we want to do what we did in the previous chapter. Whenever we approach a subtraction problem, we want to change subtraction to addition. So what we're going to do is we're going to KCC. Anytime we have subtraction, we keep the first one. So negative 5/8 is going to stay negative 5/8. We change subtraction to addition, and then we change this to this opposite. So we change 3/8 to negative 3/8. We change subtraction, or we keep the first one the same, change subtraction to addition, change the number behind the subtraction sign. So what we're really looking at is we're looking at negative 5/8 plus negative 3/8. Well, I already have 5 negatives, and I'm adding 3 more negatives, so I have 8 negatives. Well, a negative 8 divided by 8 is equal to a negative 1. So in example 6, our answer is negative 1. All right, example 7, negative 7/10 minus 2/10. Same process. We keep, change, because we have subtraction. So we keep the first one the same, so negative 7/10 stays negative 7/10. Change subtraction to addition, and change 2/10 to negative 2/10. So this really means that my problem is a negative 7 plus a negative 2, and we keep the denominator the same. Well, if I already have 7 negatives and I add 2 more negatives, I now have 9 negatives. So that means that this fraction is negative 9/10. And that's my answer. Example 8, we're going to find 5/8, take away 7/8. So we do the same thing. We keep, change. So if I have 5/8, because we keep that, change subtraction to addition, and change 7/8 to negative 7/8. All right, so here I have 5 plus negative 7. Well, looking at this, I have 5 positives, I have 7 negatives. I have more negatives than I do positives. So what I'm really doing is I'm taking 7, take away 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. So I have 2 more of something. I have 2 more negatives than I do positives. So my answer is a negative 2/8. Well, now looking at this fraction, 2/8, I can see that 2 and 8 both divide by 2. So what we do is we divide 2 and 8 by 2. Well, so we divide by 2 on top. 2 divided by 2, that's negative 1 because it's a negative divided by positive. 8 divided by 2, that equals 4. So our final answer is actually a negative 1/4. Because we divided by 2 divided by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So when we divide by 1, we don't actually change the fraction. So a negative 2 divided by positive 2, that's negative 1. 8 divided by 2, that's 4. So this is pretty much how we do these types of problems. Let's do one more, and then we'll do word count, and you guys are done for a day. In example 9, we're going to find 3/12 minus 9/12. So we keep 3/12 stays 3/12. Change subtraction to addition, and change 9/12 to negative 9/12. So what we're really looking at is 3/12 plus negative 9/12. So I look at the top. I have a positive 3, I have a negative 9. I have more negatives than I do positives. So what I'm going to do is take 9, take 3 away. I have 6 more negatives than I do positives. So that means my answer is a negative 6. And then it's negative 6 out of 12. Well, I'm looking at 6 and I'm looking at 12, and I say, can they simplify? In this case, both 6 and 12 divide by 6. So we would divide a negative 6 by 6. Negative 6 divided by 6, that's negative 1. 12 divided by 6, that's 2. So what that means is our final answer is that this problem, 3 12ths minus 9 12ths, is actually a negative 1/2. And that's our answer for this. One more problem, word problem, and you guys are done. For our final example, we're talking about population in different states. So we're talking about Florida and Ohio. So it says about 6 out of every 100 people of the United States live in Florida. So every 6 people out of 100 live in Florida. Another 4 out of every 100 live in Ohio. So if you were to survey 100 people, chances are 6 out of 100 people would live in Florida and 4 out of 100 people would live in Ohio. Now the question is about what fraction more lives in Florida than than Ohio. So what fraction more lives in Florida than Ohio? So what we're going to do is we're going to take Florida and take away Ohio to figure out how much more live in Florida than Ohio. So we have 6 out of 100 live in Florida. We subtract 4 out of 100 that live in Ohio. 6 minus 4 is equal to 2 out of 100. And so what we would do is we'd simplify this. Well, 2 and 100 both divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. So that means about 1 more person out of every 50 live in Florida than Ohio. And that's our answer to this problem. You guys did awesome today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to this video.